The annual Galactic Council Species Safety Review was typically the most boring event in the known universe. Seriously, watching paint dry on a frozen moon had more entertainment value. But this year, Ambassador Trell of the Zentari Collective decided to spice things up by putting humanity on trial for crimes against common sense. Trell stood at the central podium, his scales shimmering under the council chamber's lights, clutching a datapad like it contained evidence of war crimes. Which, to be fair, he probably thought it did. "Esteemed council members," Trell began, his voice carrying that special tone of someone who practiced this speech in the mirror. "We must address the humans and their blatant disregard for basic survival instincts. Specifically, their insistence on cohabitating with predatory fauna. Around the circular chamber, representatives from 47 species nodded in agreement. Everyone had heard the stories. Humans living with wolves. Humans cuddling with apex predators. Humans keeping reptiles that could swallow them whole as quote-unquote emotional support animals. Jake Morrison, Earth's ambassador and the only human in the room, leaned back in his chair with his feet up on the desk. He was grinning. This was going to be fun. "Ambassador Morrison," Trell continued, pointing one clawed finger accusingly. "Your species domesticated wolves. Wolves! Creatures designed by evolution itself to hunt in packs and tear apart prey twice your size. You brought them into your homes. You let them sleep in your beds. You call them good boys." Jake shrugged. "Well, they are good boys, Trell. Also good girls. Very good girls." A murmur rippled through the council. Nix, the insectoid representative from the hive reaches, clicked his mandibles nervously. "This is precisely the issue, human Jake. Your species treats mortal danger as a friendship opportunity." Okay, Jake said, holding up his hands in mock surrender. "I get it. You're all worried about our pets, but here's the thing." He paused for dramatic effect, his grin widening. "Pets are just the beginning." The chamber fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop in zero gravity. Trell's scales went from shimmering green to a pale yellow. "What do you mean, the beginning?" Jake stood up, stretching casually, and activated his own holo display. "Well, since we're on the topic of humans and dangerous animals, I figured I should tell you about what we like to ride." Commander Vosh, the stoic military officer from the Kryn Empire, leaned forward slightly. He had fought in 3 galactic wars without flinching, but something in Jake's tone made even him uncomfortable. "Ride?" Nix repeated, his voice climbing an octave. "Ride what, exactly?" Jake's smile was absolutely diabolical. "Oh, buddy, you're gonna want to sit down for this one." Jake tapped his datapad, and a holographic image materialized above the council floor. It showed a massive, muscular creature with 4 legs, wild eyes, and hooves that looked like they could crack a skull open like an egg. "This," Jake announced proudly, "is a horse." Silence. Then Trell's voice, barely a whisper. How much does that weigh?" "Oh, anywhere from 900 to over 2,000 pounds, depending on the breed." Jake zoomed in on the hooves. "See these? Solid bone and keratin. One kick can generate enough force to cave in a human ribcage. Fun fact, they kill about 20 people per year on Earth, and that's just the domestic ones we've trained." Nix's antennae drooped. "You trained them? To do what, precisely? Guard your settlements? Haul weaponry?" "Nah," Jake said, swiping to a new image showing a human sitting on top of a horse. "We climb on their backs and ride them. For fun, mostly. Sometimes for work, but honestly, mostly for fun." The hologram shifted to show footage of horse racing, show jumping, and polo. Humans clinging to these massive animals as they thundered across fields, leaped over obstacles, and occasionally threw their riders off like ragdolls. Commander Vosh's stoic expression cracked slightly. "The creature is clearly a prey animal. Notice the eyes, positioned for maximum peripheral vision. Evolution designed this species to run from predators, not carry them voluntarily. Right?" Jake said enthusiastically. "They're literally hardwired to panic and flee, which they do, often, while we're still on them. We even have a whole sport called bronco riding where the entire point is staying on a horse that's actively trying to murder you. 8 seconds, that's all you gotta last. 8 seconds on an animal that wants you dead." Trell had gone completely silent, staring at the hologram like it might attack him through the screen. "But here's the best part," Jake continued, clearly enjoying himself way too much. "Horses are considered the safe option." Nix made a sound like steam escaping from a broken valve. "Safe? You called that safe?" "Comparatively, yeah. I mean, they've been domesticated for like 6,000 years. We've got helmets and everything. Most people don't even die." Jake paused. "Well, not most. Some. A reasonable percentage definitely die. What? Commander Vosh said slowly, each word carefully measured. Is the unsafe option. Jake's grin could have lit up a dark matter reactor. Oh man, I'm so glad you asked. He swiped to the next image, and several council members physically recoiled. Ambassador Trell made a noise that the universal translator couldn't process. On the display was a creature that looked like rage incarnated into flesh. Massive shoulders, curved horns, muscles on muscles, and eyes that promised violence. Gentlemen, ladies, and non-binary representatives, Jake said like a game show host revealing a prize. Meet the bull. Nick stood up so fast his chair clattered backward. No, absolutely not. You do not ride that. We absolutely do ride that, Jake confirmed cheerfully. Mechanical ones too, but those are honestly safer. So let's focus on the real ones. 2,000 pounds of pure testosterone and bad attitude. We climb on their backs, and they try to kill us. It's called rodeo, and it's a beloved cultural tradition. The hologram showed footage of bull riding. Humans being thrown, trampled, gored, and occasionally, very occasionally, managing to stay on for the required time. Trell finally found his voice. Why? Why would you do this? Jake looked at him with absolute sincerity. Prize money? Bragging rights? The thrill of mortal danger? He shrugged. Take your pick, really. We're just getting warmed up, Jake added, reaching for his datapad again. Commander Vosh's military composure was officially gone. He looked like a man watching his entire tactical worldview collapse in real time. Jake pulled up the next series of images, and the council chamber descended into chaos. So we've covered land animals, he said over the rising panic. But humans also really enjoy riding things that aren't technically designed to be ridden, like waves. The hologram showed surfers carving through 30-foot walls of water during storm conditions. Humans balanced on thin boards, dancing with liquid mountains that could pulverize bone. Those are tsunamis in miniature, Commander Vosh said flatly. You ride them voluntarily. Yeah, and check out the bonus feature. Jake zoomed in on a shadow beneath the waves. See that? That's a shark. They hang out in the same waters. Adds spice to the experience. Nix was calculating frantically on his own datapad. I'm running survival probability algorithms, and they keep returning error messages. Your species should be extinct. Should be. Yeah, Jake agreed. But here's the thing about humans. We looked at falling and thought, what if we did that on purpose? From really high up, the hologram shifted to skydivers, then hang gliders, then wingsuit flyers threading through canyon gaps at terminal velocity. Humans turning themselves into meat missiles and calling it recreation. Trell had his head in his hands. His scales were cycling through colors the universal database didn't have names for. We strap fabric to our bodies and jump off mountains, Jake narrated casually. We call it flying. Technically it's falling with style, but who's counting? Oh, and sometimes the fabric doesn't open properly. That's just part of the fun, really. Adds stakes. Stakes, Nix repeated weakly. You mean death? Well, yeah. But like, exciting death. Commander Vosh stood abruptly. Ambassador Morrison, I have fought in 3 galactic wars. I have led troops into impossible battles. I have stared down extinction-level threats without fear, but your species terrifies me in ways I cannot articulate. Jake beamed like he'd just received a compliment. Thanks, man. That means a lot. Want to see the really crazy stuff? There's more? Trell's voice cracked. Oh, buddy, Jake said, pulling up the final section of his presentation. We haven't even gotten to the vehicles yet. The temperature in the council chamber seemed to drop 10 degrees. Every representative stared at the human with dawning horror. Vehicles? Nix whispered. Vehicles, Jake confirmed. See, at some point, riding animals wasn't dangerous enough, so we built our own. The hologram flickered to life, showing humans on motorcycles launching off dirt ramps, twisting through mid-air, and occasionally missing the landing in spectacular fashion. We took controlled explosions, Jake explained conversationally, strapped them between our legs, added 2 wheels for maximum instability, and pointed ourselves at obstacles. It's called motocross. The goal is to go as high and as fast as possible while pulling tricks that have names like the suicide no-hander. You named it suicide, Commander Vosh said. You literally named it suicide and still do it. Well, yeah, truth in advertising. The display shifted to street racing, bikes weaving through traffic at speeds that made the numbers on screen look like typos. Then, mountain biking down near vertical cliff faces. Then parkour across skyscraper rooftops. Nix's calculations had progressed from survival probability to what appeared to be existential mathematics. I'm trying to determine if your species has a collective death wish encoded in your DNA. Nah, it's not a death wish, Jake said. It's more like a life wish. A really, really intense life wish that occasionally results in death. Trell looked up from his hands. His voice was hollow. How are you not extinct? Excellent question. I think it's because the ones who survive keep making more humans who are exactly as insane. Natural selection. But backwards. Jake swiped to a new image. Oh, this one's great. Base jumping. We jump off buildings, antennas, spans, and Earth. That's what base stands for. The 4 categories of fixed objects we hurl ourselves off of with a parachute that may or may not deploy in time. The footage showed humans leaping from antennas, barely clearing obstacles, deploying chutes with seconds to spare. The margin for error is measured in heartbeats, Jake narrated cheerfully. And sometimes we do it in wingsuits. Remember those? Yeah, we fly those between buildings now. Thread the needle at 120 miles per hour. Miss by 3 feet, you're a stain. Nail it, and you're a legend. Commander Vosh sat back down heavily. Your species weaponized recreation. I mean, when you put it that way, it sounds bad. It is bad, Nix shrieked. Jake just smiled and loaded his final presentation slide. Okay. One more thing before we wrap up. The entire council groaned in unison. The hologram displayed a montage that looked like humanity's highlight reel of near-death experiences. Free solo rock climbing up sheer cliff faces without ropes. Cave diving into underwater labyrinths where one wrong turn meant drowning in the dark. Volcano boarding down active volcanic slopes on pieces of plywood. We surf lava fields, Jake said, like he was describing his grocery list. We wrestle alligators in Florida for entertainment. We invented something called parkour, which is basically pretending the ground is lava but as adults in urban environments. We climb frozen waterfalls with ice picks. We box each other for sport, giving each other brain damage consensually. Trell was rocking back and forth. Make it stop. Oh, and remember how I mentioned we strap ourselves to explosions? Let me elaborate on that. Jake pulled up images of drag racing, Formula 1 crashes, and the Isle of Man TT race. 200 miles per hour on public roads lined with stone walls and trees. The death toll is part of the tradition. People keep competing anyway. We've turned speed into a competitive suicide pact. Nix's datapad sparked and died. He'd apparently overloaded it with impossible calculations. Commander Vosh's military bearing had completely evaporated. You do all of this with primitive medical technology. Your average lifespan should be 17 years. Yeah, but the ones who make it to 18 are built different. The hologram showed extreme skiing, big wave surfing, storm chasing, running with bulls in Pamplona, and something called parkour between moving trains. Emergency motion, Trell croaked, raising one trembling claw. I move that we classify humanity as galactically insane and quarantine their planet for the safety of rational species everywhere. Seconded, Nix wheezed. Thirded, Commander Vosh added. Jake held up a finger. Before you vote, there's one thing I should mention. The entire council froze in terror. All of this? Every single thing I've shown you? Jake's grin was absolutely manic. We do it for fun, not survival, not military training, not resource acquisition. Fun. Pure, recreational, optional fun. Nobody makes us do any of this. We choose it. We pay money to do it. The silence that followed was the sound of 47 alien species collectively questioning the universe's design choices. Trell pressed the vote button with a shaking claw. The measure passed unanimously. The vote tally flashed across the central display. Unanimous. Humanity was officially classified as galactically insane, and Earth was to be left alone for everyone's peace of mind. Jake leaned back in his chair, looking supremely satisfied with himself. Well, that went better than expected. Better? Nix's voice was somewhere between a squeak and a dying wheeze. We just voted to quarantine your entire species. Yeah, but you're leaving us alone. That's honestly the best outcome. No trade regulations, no safety inspections, no boring bureaucratic oversight. We can just keep doing our thing. Jake stretched and stood up. Appreciate it, really. Commander Vosh rubbed his temples, a gesture he'd apparently learned from watching human diplomats. I have one question, Ambassador Morrison. Just one. Why are you telling us all this? You could have kept these activities classified. Jake's smile softened into something almost genuine. Because you guys were worried about our pets. I figured if you understood the full scope of human recreational activities, a couple of domesticated dogs wouldn't seem so bad anymore. Perspective, you know? Trell looked up, his scales slowly returning to their normal color. So this was a negotiating tactic. Maybe a little, Jake admitted. But also, I genuinely thought you should know what you're dealing with. Informed decision-making and all that. The council members exchanged glances. Somewhere in their collective relief at voting for quarantine, they'd forgotten they were being manipulated. Nix clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. You humans are more cunning than we gave you credit for. We're full of surprises. Jake gathered his datapad and headed toward the exit. Then he paused, turning back with an expression of innocent curiosity. Oh, one more thing. That creature you guys ride on Zentari Prime, Trell. The six-legged lumpy one that moves at like 2 miles per hour. What's it called again? Trell's eyes narrowed suspiciously. The Grondel. Why? Just curious. Some extreme sports enthusiasts back on Earth were asking about alien fauna. Thought it might be fun to start an exchange program. You know, cultural activities. Interspecies bonding. Jake's grin returned full force. I'm thinking Grondel racing could be Earth's next big thing. Really spice up your traditional migration festivals. The color drained from Trell's scales again. You stay away from our Grondels. Hey, we'll be careful, helmets and everything. Jake winked. See you next year, Council. Oh, and Vosh, if you're ever on Earth, look me up. I'll take you skydiving. Commander Vosh actually shuddered. I would rather face the Xylar Death Fleet again. Your loss. As Jake left the chamber, the Council sat in stunned silence. Finally, Nix spoke up. Did he just threaten to turn our sacred migration ceremonies into human death sports? Yes, Trell said quietly. Yes, he did, and we just voted to leave them unsupervised. Yes. Another long pause. Should we reconsider? Trell thought about horses and bulls and motorcycles and humans throwing themselves off mountains for fun. He thought about a species that looked at mortal danger and asked what if we did that recreationally. He thought about what humans might do with actual oversight and regulations to rebel against. No, he decided firmly. We leave them alone. Far, far alone. And we pray to whatever gods we have that they stay on their side of the galaxy. The motion carried. Again, unanimously. Back on Earth, Jake filed his report with a single sentence. Mission accomplished. They think we're crazy. Nobody will bother us for at least a decade. He was already planning next year's presentation. Maybe something about Australian wildlife. The galaxy wasn't ready, but that had never stopped humanity before.